Welcome to the Long Strange Trip. I'm Josh, the host of the show. We're going to dig into 6 areas together, finding real work-life integration instead of that brutal 95-5 split too many business owners live with. We're going to approach retirement as an actual reinvention rather than just stopping work. And we're facing death honestly and avoiding PTSD around it. We're also building resilience when life throws us curveballs. We're sharing wisdom across generations. And finally, we're understanding the patterns that show up in all our transitions. I'm not coming at this as an expert. I'm a fellow traveler, figuring this stuff out in real time, especially now as I navigate my own dual cancer diagnosis at 73. Welcome to the Long Strange Trip. I'm glad you're here. Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at the Long Strange Trip podcast. And my guest today is Paul Bond. Paul owns a company called, I think it's Bond Safety, isn't it, Paul?
Yep.
Yeah, Bond Safety. And Paul and I have had a similar experience, and one I hope you never have to experience yourself. Both Paul and I are cancer survivors of going through a very serious cancer treatment while trying to run a company. And at least for me, it was trying to run a company. For Paul, he may have been doing it better than I, but we'll find out. So we're going to start there, and let's bring Paul on, and we'll start the conversation. Hey, Paul, how are you today?
Josh, I am fine and dandy. Thank you for asking.
I love that, fine and dandy. By the way, Paul is very funny and is one of the most prolific and interesting writers you're ever going to come across if you want to read fantasy. And he writes fantasy incredibly well. But we're not going to talk about that right now.
No.
So, Paul, you had a very serious cancer event a couple of years ago, and you are the CEO of your company, which means that you probably have some responsibilities that you tried to take advantage of while going through cancer treatment. So can you talk a little bit about both what your treatment was and what you had to do to try to keep the company afloat while you were going through cancer treatment?
Yeah. Well, 3.5 years ago now, I discovered that I had what proved to be a tumor in my bladder, and it was initially diagnosed as being relatively minor, straightforward operation, should be able to sort it out. And then after that operation, it proved to have been more advanced than they thought, which led to a referral to a second consultant and necessitated 16 weeks of chemotherapy and then a further operation, which resulted in the removal of my bladder, prostate, left kidney, and various lymph nodes that were in the way. So it had me out of action really from the very beginning of the 16-week chemotherapy. And I'm very fortunate in our company is a family company. I run it with my 2 brothers. So for me, it was a very straightforward thing to delegate, and they insisted on me just focusing completely on, going through what I was going through and recovery out the other side. So I effectively absolved myself of all responsibility, and it's one of those very, very humbling things in that in my 8-month absence, the company did much, much better than it had done at any point in the previous 10 years. So
funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yes. So it turned out I was dispensable, but So since then, so I was probably 8 months out completely, and then ever since I sort of come and go. There's areas of the business that I have to focus on at times, like contracts that come up, and so I might be quite busy at those for a while, but they're quite happy for me to potter about in between those times. So I've got involved in a project. We build large wooden sculptures out in a local park, and so I potter about doing that, and I have for the past 3 years, I've had, CT scans and various tests every 6 months. And just last June, it spaced them out now to 12 months because everything seemed to be sort of holding its own. So the nature,
That and
sorry,
that's great news.
yeah,
I know that when it was after my cancer treatment, every time we had a screening,
yeah,
I was waiting for the doctor to come into the room.
yeah,
I was always panicked
yeah,
because for
yeah,
some reason I was expecting bad news, not good news.
yeah. Well, I think that's a perfectly natural thing. My wife, she says that in between, because here will I probably get called for the CT scan maybe 4 months before, or sorry, 4 weeks before my appointment with my consultant. So my wife says that 4 weeks all the time, she notices now not the easiest person to live with and don't sleep. So like that, exactly what you said, it's a test has been done. Somebody has the results sitting somewhere in a drawer, and until that person in a white coat walks into an office, you know, just at that split second, it's Schrodinger's cancer. I have it back or I don't, until they smile or look serious.
Yeah, and, if you're unfortunate like me, you can wait 18 years to have her come back again, which
Yeah.
I which I actually guess is pretty fortunate if
Yeah.
you really wanna think about that,
Yeah.
because I'm assuming your cancer had a relatively low survival rate as mine did.
Um, yeah, yeah, it seemed to be quite aggressive for, it's not very often that I'm in the younger age bracket of anything anymore, but, it seemed to be I was in the younger end of getting that particular type of cancer, and that type of cancer I had, it's normally associated with people who smoke, which I hadn't. Did smoke when I was younger, but I hadn't smoked in, I think, 25 years, so that wasn't a factor. And then subsequent to my operations, they discovered a second unrelated cancer in the prostate. So I think, like yourself, one of the narrow band of people who had two active different types of cancer at the same time. So, yeah, no, I consider myself very fortunate. But like, they did tell me the nature of the cancer, the original one that I've had, is that it will come back at some stage. So that's keep me under surveillance, that hopefully spot it early enough.
Yeah, hopefully, if it comes back, they have something they can do about it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, I have other organs that I'm prepared to sacrifice.
Ah. And what might that be?
I'd rather not put them in order right now. Hopefully,
Well,
hopefully something that I have two of, and they can take one.
that would be a good thing.
Yes.
So, smokers get bladder cancer. That's something I did not know.
Well, they're more prone to it. Apparently, they just said 90% of the cases they come across, it's somebody who is smoking.
Interesting,
Yeah.
interesting. So, what was your, you know, as you're going through diagnosis and treatment and all that kind of good
Mhm.
stuff, you seem to be a pretty positive guy. Were you able to stay positive during all of that?
Yeah, I was very, very much so, because, our health service, probably like everybody's health service, is constantly derided in the media. But once I was involved in it, like, I just marveled at the, the care and attention that I was getting. And, obviously we're very fortunate over here in Ireland that we have a public health system. So even though I had private health insurance, the second operation was at a level that it wasn't covered by any, private hospital, or couldn't be facilitated in a private hospital. So my whole chemo and second operations and everything has been on the public health system. And as I said, I just marveled at the care and attention I got, how prompt it was. The only time sort of got very down was after the first operation, which in advance they had thought this will sort everything out, and being told I went, and that was during COVID, so my wife couldn't come into the consultant's room with me to get the results and everything. Uh, she was sitting out in the car, so he told me this is a lot bigger than we had hoped, and it will necessitate removal of the bladder. and possibly the left kidney, and so that was a shock. But the worst thing then was walking back out into the car park and having to say that out loud, to my wife. And so that was the lowest point throughout everything. After that, as I said, would go up to Dublin every Wednesday for my chemo treatment. One day, just I counted going into the hospital that Wednesday, from the receptionist greeting me, you know, nurse coming to take my bloods, a lady coming around with tea and Madeira cake, and I think it counted 26 people, on that day ward that I interacted with that day. And everybody, they all said my name. And, it was a day ward. So they were seeing maybe 100 people that day, every other day. And, when I'd go back the second week, they'd ask, is Eileen with you today? Is she in the car? They'd remember your kids' name. I just couldn't. They were seeing hundreds of people. I was just seeing these 5 or 6 chemo nurses, and I couldn't remember their names from one week to the next.
That's pretty typical for me also, but
Mm,
your care seemed to be a much higher level than what I got. My
right.
oncologist was great, and
Mm,
the nurses were good,
mm.
but nobody, I wasn't greeted by name by everybody I ran across.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's incredible. It makes probably made it easier. So
Oh, no, it certainly did, certainly did.
how did your family handle all this stuff?
My mother, she had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Um,
Uh-huh.
gosh, maybe 35 years ago. So we sort of within, with my parents and my 2 brothers, we had some familiarity with, someone who had cancer, but it was a shock to everybody. But I think probably, as you said, I would be quite a positive person. So I think me being positive about it, maybe kept them going. And then in my own family, my wife just, she did everything, looked after everything, and she'd be quite a positive person too. And we have 3 of our own kids who are all now in their, early to mid 20s. And I would imagine it was tough on them because, as I said, I think it hit. So we have our eldest son, Jake, daughter, Robin, and our youngest son, Elliot. And I think it hit Robin, the hardest, that this was just something that wasn't supposed to happen. And yeah, it probably affected her more than the others.
And so did you go public with your cancer or did you keep that private?
Oh, no, told everybody.
I actually think that's the right thing to do. And
Oh, yeah.
did you find the more people you told, the more support you got?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 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 People were very, very people were generally very supportive, and I know but I write a weekly blog every Friday. So I think from the earliest treatment, I think I used a photograph of myself in a gown with an infusion of something going into, so like everybody knew, week by week how I was getting on. But it
Mhm.
led to, people that I didn't know very well, um, you know, called to my house with, baked a cake. I had been involved. An old friend of ours, do you remember Carol Dublin
Uh-huh.
from that writing thing years ago? And she had a Facebook group I run for, where she matched, uh, sort of ill children who couldn't run with runners, and it was a private Facebook group. So if I went out for a run or took part in a race, I'd take photographs and then let the child I was paired with, know about it. And it was just sort of an interaction that somebody far away was interested in them and whatnot. But that was years ago. And the chap that I had been paired with, Jarrett, I think he's a young man now, but I stayed in touch with him and his mother. And I think about 3, 4 weeks into my chemo treatment, a care package arrived, from America with, warm socks and ginger lollipops and, so yeah, so like sort of letting everybody know sort of allowed people to be nice about it. So yeah, it was very much a positive thing.
How about your customers? Did they have any reaction?
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, they did. They did. Lots of them reached out and probably didn't hassle my brothers too much for discount during that time. Yeah. No, as I said, everybody was,
Yeah.
couldn't have been more helpful and supportive.
Yeah, I found when I was going through my treatment that or my major treatment, that my customers were very, um, what's the word I'm trying to think of? They were very accepting of what I was going through,
Hmm.
and they only called if they actually had a reason, an
Mm.
important thing to talk to me about. Otherwise, they pretty much left me alone for almost 2 years.
Right. Okay.
And that was a really good thing
Mm.
because now, unlike you, I didn't have any brothers who could step in and take over the
Okay.
business. It was sort of me, myself, and I, and a few
Okay.
associates, but we all
Mm.
had our own book of business, and we didn't actually work as a firm, even though we were under the same firm. It was sort of like a
Yeah.
bunch of silos set up around the world.
Mm.
But at any rate, it was interesting. So
Mm.
what kind of advice would you have for somebody who is about to or who gets diagnosed with a life-threatening cancer diagnosis?
Um. Well, no, I'm not usually short for words, but when I was going through my treatment, I embraced it. I don't know if that makes sense, and I just I had I had an oncologist, I had my urologist consultant, and I had all these wonderful nurses, and literally they had training. I did not. I didn't look. Don't Google anything. That would be, yeah. Do not do that, and don't Google anything, and just do what your nurses and doctors tell you. That would be the best
Yeah.
advice. And also, keep a diary, tell everybody, write down how you're feeling about different things, and don't be afraid to tell everybody what you're going through, because, you'll be surprised at the support you get and sometimes where you get it from. I had fellas that I was at school with and hadn't seen in maybe 30 years reach out to me, and, so, and it's a very, very odd thing to say, but obviously it's life changing, but it was my brother Stephen said to me, I think it was only last year, and he just said, Paul, don't take this the wrong way, but you having that cancer has been the making of you.
I was told that by a couple of people also.
You
They
should
said, "You've
start to
gotten
think.
a bit softer." Well, okay.
Yeah, probably, probably. Well, you do did different thing. Your perspective and your focus, what's important to you, obviously changes dramatically. Because up until something like this happens, we're going to live forever. And then you realize, that quite possibly you're not, unless it's going to be a head in a jar somewhere, which I don't fancy either. But, my wife said, somebody said, "How's Paul getting on with his treatment?" And she said if he was any more enthusiastic about it, he'd be recommending it to people.
Somehow
So,
I'm not surprised by that.
yeah, so,
My goal going through cancer treatment was just to stay in the present.
yeah,
In other words, just show up, put one foot in front of the other,
yeah,
and whatever the day brought, and not
yeah,
catastrophizing or saying
mhm,
life is gonna get just great in, X amount of time.
yeah,
Um, it's interesting in Viktor Frankl's book, Man of Meaning, um, he talks about the people in the concentration camps who survived.
mm,
And they were people who did not think about what the future was going to bring. Are they going to be out by
Hmm.
Rosh Hashanah, it could be out by Passover. Well, if you just stayed neutral, you
Hmm.
had a better chance of surviving than if
Hmm.
you either catastrophize or think things are going to be great.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much true for cancer treatment too.
Yeah. Well, no, it definitely is. Everybody, as I said, everybody was very supportive, and some people probably, despite themselves, or you know, uh, they would almost, be commiserating with you. Like they would mean well, but saying, "Oh, this is terrible. You must feel awful," or "How will you ever manage, to get through this?" So, like, you quickly start to avoid people like that. I know they mean well, but they were nearly hoping for, "Have you any more bad news?"
Well, I don't know if those people hope for more bad news. I think what it is that they're really talking about themselves more than
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. But I would say to people, anybody who did say that, and I said in my whole, treatment journey and everything, I said probably the time I was at greatest danger was probably driving from Monaghan to Dublin and the journey
Yeah.
home in the car. I said, like, because everybody, you leave your house every day, you don't know what's going to happen. And it's probably, it is definitely a positive thing. I'm sure you found it like true a treatment or an illness like we've had, in that sort of you can prepare too for, makes you think about what way you want things to be left, not to the nitty gritty, or who's going to get that vinyl album or that signed piece of memorabilia, but just in general, that I I do want to speak to this person or that person, or I want this person to know how I feel about them, and not leaving any of those things longer than the next time I meet them from now on.
Yeah, when you read about people who are in the last stages of life,
Mm.
that's one of the main things that people are sorry they didn't do more of, which is tell people how they feel about them.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm about to write a Substack article,
Hmm.
basically is saying we all need more hugs.
Yes.
I don't think we have enough hugs in life, and I think the people who find giving hugs off-putting really should re-examine that because
Yeah.
it's just it's one of those things where
Yeah.
you know physical contact is important.
No, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
No, I'm an active hugger myself.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would invite anybody who runs across me and wants to give me a great big hug, go right ahead and do so. I
Yeah,
will
I
reciprocate.
also I had two of my best friends, Mickey and Ronan, like we were at school together, and we'd always tried to meet up once a year, but as we've all got married, and Mickey lives in Dublin, Ronan lives in London, and we've families and whatnot, sometimes that would slip. But when I was ill, they were both very keen. As soon as you're out of hospital and as soon as you're up to it, we want to go out and have dinner and whatnot. And I said, yeah. So we arranged a date, and then I think it was Ronan said, "Oh, another friend, Milo, would he come, or are you in touch with?" And then somebody had said, "What about Cyril?" So we ended up having, there was 10 of us went for dinner that night, and some of us hadn't seen each other, certainly as that group hadn't been together in since 1984 when we left school. And we called it the Not Dead Yet dinner. And we've had it annually now for the last 3 years. It's up to 25 of us were there
Wow.
last November. But again, it's great, guys, um that shared a formative time together. And uh, it's so, like, my sort of illness led to that, and other things like that I made this, well, it wasn't a stupid idea, but I decided I wasn't going to say no to anything. The stupid
Yes.
part was writing it in my blog that other people were aware of it. So if they ask me to anything, they know I can't say no.
Yes.
Yeah, so I go to different concerts and festivals, and if anybody wants to meet, for dinner or a pint or go anywhere, I don't say no anymore. I just, yeah, let's go. So it's good attitude.
It is a good attitude.
Yeah,
So, Paul, unfortunately, we are out of time.
very good.
So, if somebody wanted to talk to you was in their own cancer
Hmm.
experience, would you be willing to do so?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So, if they wanted to contact you, how would they go about doing that?
Um, well, my blog has its own website, and it's the superjetrobotdinosaurs.com.
Hmm.
So they can contact me through that.
Okay, that sounds good. And I've got something I would like you to do, if you're interested, that is.
Yeah.
If you're watching or listening to this podcast episode and you say, that was kind of interesting. I think I have something to add about the long, strange trip. Why don't you just send me an email and we'll set a time to talk to see if being a guest on this show would be right for you.
Mhm.
And it's pretty easy. Just send me an email at jpatrick@stage2solution.com. That's the number two, and solution is singular. So it's jpatrick@stage2solution.com. And we'll set up a time to talk and see if this will be right for you. So thanks a lot for stopping by and listening or watching or whatever you're doing. And I hope to see you back here really soon. Thanks for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate you being part of this journey. I'd be grateful if you'd leave an honest rating and review. It helps other people find these conversations, lets me know what's landing with you and what isn't. If you love the show, give us 5 stars. And if you hate it, give it 1 star and I'll just cry a little bit. Keep asking the hard questions. Keep being honest about what's difficult. And remember, we're all just trying to figure this out together. I'll talk to you next time on The Long Strange Trip. Thanks for stopping by.